All right. Well, hello to the three of you. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Feeling great. I'm so glad to gather. It occurred to me that each of you knows so much about reproductive rights. And so I thought it would be great to have a conversation, the four of us, or the three of you, I can just watch. But let's go around and let you sort of just introduce yourself. You each have a monologue in the anthology, Frozen Women Flowing Thoughts. Maybe not a reproductive rights monologue, but you each have expertise in that field. So I'll just let you popcorn jump in.
Well, I'm Cindy Cooper. I'll jump in. And for about the past 24 years, I've been running a theater strictly devoted to reproductive freedom arts. And we initially were called Words of Choice. Now we're called Repro Freedom Arts. And we've traveled to 20 states. We've done lots of live streaming even before it was popular. We have 2 book volumes. So we do lots of arts activities related to reproductive freedom, rights, health, and justice. And most of our pieces are collages. They're collections of lots of different works. So we work with 50 or 60 writers and a couple hundred actors. And right now our current project is called Repro Eco. It's the intersection of reproductive rights and environmental justice.
Well, I'm a playwright, and I specialize in plays that sort of recover famous lesbians that have been kind of lost in history. And I do have a little bit of a special interest in reproductive rights, and I have a play that deals with Comstock, and I guess we'll be talking about him. And then a short piece, it's a monologue. I also have a play about surrogacy that I wrote maybe 30 years ago, which is interesting. People weren't very interested in surrogacy at that time. Some wonderful books have been written about it. It was called A Labor Play. And then I also, along the lines of that, I wrote about foreign adoption, colonialism, and how it impacts motherhood, etc. And that's called The Goddess Tour. And I think Deb did a reading of that. Yes, did you not?
I did.
Yeah.
Also, Comstock Act play, we did a reading in an art gallery in DC on
the Gage. It was the Gage and Mr. Comstock. Yeah, and I am currently researching a play about Madame Restel. So that's me.
Yay, both of you, yay. And now Paula.
Yeah, I have a degree, or I have a background in journalism, and I started off as an author. I've written 4 books, and that includes All in My Head about invisible disability in women, and specializing in chronic pain. And it's a comedy, believe it or not, the Black comedy. And then 30 years ago, I started researching Jane, and I started writing a play about it. So now, yeah, the last production of it was just in Chicago, and it was Jeff nominated. And because I'm in Chicago and I started this so long ago, I was able to interview a lot of people who've since passed away. And also I put ads in different papers to find people who use Jane, which was probably the most rare thing to find. And then and it's gone through many drafts and iterations. And I decided to make it a part documentary play because it was so unbelievable. When I started this, almost nothing had been written about it. And there is a model. There are 2 monologues from it that will be in your book. And Venus did readings of it in 2006 and 2007. So the monologue that's in there is an interview with Marie Leaner, who's known as Micki. She was the only Black member of Jane, and she let Jane use her apartment. And she was also involved with the Chicago conspiracy trial in the late 60s, early 70s.
We were able to interview both of you for another one of these podcasts, which was incredible.
Yeah, she's now in a nursing home, yeah, in her 80s.
Yeah.
A lot of great stories.
Yeah. And so Venus has staged Jane at was it American University or George Washington University in DC?
George, yeah.
And then Cindy, we've mostly done the sports characters for you, but I know one of my people went to work for your reproductive tour a long time ago, and I'm going to see it and just watching what you're doing with this company, and so it's just incredible.
Well, we were going to Washington D.C. because we've traveled all these different places. When we went to Washington D.C., we called on you for help in casting because we needed local people.
That's right. We forgot about that.
And I just want to say, you know, Paula, I met Paula in Chicago at the National Abortion Federation conference. That was like one of our first out of time gigs. And she came up and introduced herself. And with Comstock, Anthony Comstock and Madame Restell are basically the first two stops on our reproductive freedom walking tour.
Oh, how wonderful.
And I bring an actor along with me who's always a woman, and she does we do a little imitation. She does a little imitation of Comstock, you know, with this where he got started, on the location where he got started. She pulls up her, you know, pants, and well, anyhow, it's quite incredible. I don't want to take too much time, but we just did one on this week with a group of students from Denmark. And, you know, just trying to, we could have just stayed at the Comstock stop, Comstock and Madame Restell, because they had so many questions.
What is this, the Comstock stop? What is the building?
Tell us more, Cindy.
Well, you know, our reproductive freedom walking tour is based on all this deep historical research, you know, like kind of along what Paula is talking about. So one of the things that came up is that first of all, his office was down in that area. We don't quite go right by it, but that his first job in New York, he came to New York after the Civil War, where he had some minor role for the North. And his first job was on Warren Street, which is not far from City Hall. So we started City Hall, we set the landscape, and then we start really after the Civil War. And Comstock is right there on Warren Street. So then a few blocks away, you know, his nemesis was Madame Restell, who was an all-service provider. She provided abortions, she provided pills. They were called Restell pills. They were famous. She had, you know, we'd have a maternity ward. So she kind of did everything. She became a millionaire. She had offices in Boston and Philadelphia and several in New York. And she was one of the people he had his target on arresting, and he did arrest, not to a happy end, because she committed suicide. So that's like the next stop is one of the places where Madame Restell operated. It's the address, but probably not the building. Both of them are.
It's incredible. Let's talk for a minute about the Jane movement too. Paula, do you want to give a brief history or background on that?
The Jane Collective started in the late 60s, and it was founded by a very famous feminist activist, Heather Booth, who was a student at the University of Chicago. And she was a very dedicated activist. She went to Freedom Summer, which is in the film Mississippi Burning. So she went like the summer after the civil rights workers got killed. So very, very brave woman. And it all started when she got a call by a friend of a friend about his sister needing an abortion, and they knew that Heather was so connected in the civil rights movement, and she referred. She just in recent years she's mentioned who the doctor was, Dr. T.R.M. Howard, who was very involved in the civil rights movement. To make a very long story short, she started to get other women to help her with the referral service, and then Heather had left and did other activism, and the network got bigger, and the guy they thought was a doctor had to leave because the mafia was after him, and they realized just how simple a lot of the abortion procedure is. They started doing it themselves. So, and they did thousands and thousands of safe abortions for women across the Midwest. And it ended up, they got busted in 1973, and after 1970-71, it was mainly poor women, because the richer ones went to New York, where it had become legal.
Right.
So that's Jane in a nutshell.
I just wanted to make a comment in reading about Restel, and I'm like, kind of, what is she doing? You know, is she doing DNCs, you know, in the bedrooms or whatever? And she would actually just take a very sharp whalebone, probably out of her corset, and just pierce the amniotic sac. That's all. And what that does is it basically, it's like your water breaking.
So miscarriage.
Yes, and then she would send them home and say, you're going to want to contact a doctor and probably go to a hospital in the next 2 days. And I thought that was brilliant, because first off, they're never going to find it. It's an opening in the, you know, and it was a very simple procedure. And then you naturally miscarry. And to me, that's really safe, because it just looks like you've miscarried. It's not like, you know, you've removed something. I just thought that was really fascinating. And sometimes she'd keep them there so they'd miscarry there. But yeah, it was kind of, I guess, a high-tech version of the coat hanger, but a lot more successful, because she never lost a patient that we know of historically. But I just never knew that's all it took to get someone to miscarry, was just to puncture.
Yeah, these women, I'm telling you, you know that they'd grown up at a time where there was no information about their bodies before the internet. The only ones who had access to it were doctors and medical textbooks. So a lot of the play is just them just becoming so aware of their bodies and biology. And yeah, it was a very radicalizing thing. But yeah, at the same time, I didn't want to romanticize them, because it was illegal. And some women I interviewed reported just being scared out of their wits, even though they appreciate Jane so much. And a lot of them said Jane saved their life. It was still, you know, when you have any surgery in an illegal setting, and these were like women in their 20s in jeans and, you know, flannel shirt. And some of the women who came to them weren't political and didn't understand, you know, had only dealt with doctors before. So it's complicated. That Jane showed like the best underground abortion possible, but for a lot of women, it was still terrifying.
And one of the women who was arrested, of course, was Judith Arcana. And she became, you know, a writer often writing about abortion and Jane. And so she was one of the first people we had in our first collection with this brilliant piece called She Said, which was just all the voices of the patients. And we've continued to include something of hers almost every year, you know, and gotten her to write some new things too. The last one was a piece called "We've Always Done This," you know, about, you know, we've been, you know, fighting for reproductive freedom for a long time. And we have new fights on our hands, but, you know, there's no other option. So we're going to keep fighting for it.
Just watching the news yesterday, there were a few sort of new terms that sort of came up that I wanted to just throw out there for you to discuss at will. One was maternity care desert. I thought that was just a really interesting contemporary phrase. And I guess that's the big one I wanted to throw out there right now. I mean, watching, and I know we've all dealt with this, especially dealing with historical female characters. You see the progress and then the erasure, and it seems like, how do you not get completely depressed about it, that we've all the way slid all the way back to this place where so many women have marched us forward, including Heather Booth and Eleanor and women I've met, and, you know, who call me on my birthday and sing to me. And I'm like, it's so great to know you, but all that work you did, what's happening? why do we have maternity care deserts? What a bizarre, is it just a hatred of women? I keep coming back to that. Like, maybe the world just hates women. What are your theories on the problem, if you have any?
I don't have a theory, but I have a story that really struck me, which was Serena Williams with her pregnancy.
Yeah.
And God love her, after this horrible ordeal where she almost died, I think she got the cover of something like Vogue or something.
Yeah.
And she told the whole story. And she has some kind of strange blood condition or blood pressure condition. And, you know, she knew about it. She knew the dangers and was very clear with the hospital staff what her needs were, and they ignored them. I just remember she ended up on the floor, and there was a huge, and it's like, good Lord, if Serena Williams almost dies giving birth in a hospital, what chance do mere other Black women mortals have? You know, I would just think she would get the huge golden ticket, you know, because she's such a celebrity. That was an appalling story. And of course, the Black mortality rates are through the roof. And of course, they get different care, like Serena. I love that she told all just granular detail of that whole situation. And I hope it saves some lives. And I hope it really put the hospital on blast too.
Also, you know, I think, and this is indicative of our history, she now has started an app and put a lot of money into like trying to address maternal mortality, particularly for Black women. So, you know, she's not just telling her story, she's actually taking action and trying to move things forward in a really sensible, remarkable way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look like at the people before us as inspiration. You know, it's like they didn't stop. I mean, you know,
Right.
they kept working. They, like, you know, advocated. They tried this and they tried that, and they kept moving. And that's, you know, so that's how I look at them. I mean, we have always had Anthony Comstock or the people like him.
Mm-hmm.
We've always had a right wing, and we ignore them at our peril. You know, they're a minority. They now got some, you know, power in the reproductive rights area. But we are, you know, the people who support reproductive rights are in the majority, and we just have to keep fighting until we secure them again. That's and maybe learn the lesson, like to keep advocating and to keep trying to keep these people in check. And yes, I think they're anti-women. They also have a different worldview. I mean, I try not to demonize them too much. I mean, I just see that they have a different worldview. It's not my worldview. Their worldview has to do a lot with a God, and a God that talks to men, and men that run the world. But so they're acting out of their worldview, but, you know, we have to make sure that they don't, like, foist their worldview on the rest of us.
Yeah, they think that we can swallow a camera and they can and see our uterus. I mean, I think that. Go ahead, Paula.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that we need more. It's ironic that now politically, since Dobbs fell, that pregnant women have been on the forefront, or women who have given birth intentionally, like Serena Williams, they've been on the forefront of activism. So in Texas, there was a case where a woman was going to give birth to a stillborn. That was last year, and then she came out. Yes, she was to talk about her frustration of not being able to get an abortion in Texas. And then just in the last week, there's been so much about Idaho that it's come out that since abortion is so outlawed, that they've been airlifting women out of emergency rooms.
Yes.
So as they're hemorrhaging and yeah, as every minute counts, and they're wasting time airlifting them out to other states where they can get care to save their lives, and they have to wait until until the woman is suffering a certain extent or her health is extremely bad. So yeah, we're talking about theater too. I think we need more stories about the current realities of reproductive rights. You know, with pregnant women, or how dangerous it is being pregnant, especially in these red states. And we need more of their personal stories, because right now we mainly get just the legal stuff from the Supreme Court about it.
Just a lack of understanding of the biology of women and how our bodies actually work. I mean, that seems to be at the crux of this, as far as I can see. And so, I mean, even the funding for women's reproductive health is, I mean, you know, the men can always get the little blue pill, but you start having hot flashes, and that's when the fury really comes in. I don't care. I don't care if your penis is crooked. I feel like an alien just abducted my spine with heat. Like, why? And so I think there is some progress moving in that direction, but wow. And I guess the Arizona repeal right now is what people are talking about as well, which was 1864, right? Their abortion ban. So before slavery came to an end, they're all the way back, time traveling.
Yeah, and Comstock being more current, it's crazy than ever because of talk about banning the abortion pill.
Yeah.
So they're afraid that if Trump gets in, he'll use that as an excuse to ban the abortion pill. So yeah, it's so crazy. This thing from the 1800s is so prominent. Yeah, and I'd also like to see more on the stage dramatizations of the abortion pill, which is now how most women get abortions. So more portrayals, of things now post Dobbs.
I want to say I was working in a women's clinic, one of those early ones that was a lay women's clinic. It was 1976 or 77, probably, maybe 78. And I think we had a nurse on staff. We had no doctors. It was all just lay women. And we were also radical and passing the speculum around. And it was that time, you know. Mm-hmm. But towards the end of my time there, we were teaching each other to do menstrual extractions, which was a new technology of basically kind of suctioning out a woman's period if you don't want to have your period because you're an athlete or whatever. And so it's first trimester abortion, technically, but it's also, again, because men don't understand anatomy, it's a menstrual extraction, you know. And again, lots of reasons, lots of women would like to have more control over their periods because, you know, they're crippling for some women. And it was a really simple, really safe technique. And, you know, we were also radical. It was like there should be a woman on every city block who knows how to do a menstrual extraction. And at that time, it was not illegal because again, you'd have to prove what the woman's cycle was, how many, you know, but basically the first time you skip a period is when you would do the extraction. I thought that was brilliant because I don't like having to ask for rights. And especially petitioning men. I was a lesbian separatist for 10 years because I just needed to not be in the perpetual position in theater of trying to deal with male audience members and blah, blah, blah. And so for me, the menstrual extraction was very on the line of midwifing and women taking control of the situation and doing it for each other. I thought that was I don't hear anybody talking about that, but that was a hot new thing. And we were all learning how to do it. And it was just a simple suction out whatever is in the uterus. I mean, obviously you have to have some technique, but I remember also in the days when it was illegal, lots of kind of counterculture women were going up to some place in the Midwest, which was some situation run by indigenous women, and they would give you pennyroyal or mistletoe or something like that. And I just remember meeting women who had been through that, and it takes a while, several days or whatever. But, you know, and then I met a woman who had been doing illegal abortions forever in her little rural community in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, Oh my God, you are so brave. I just feel like it's really, women have always been taking care of business and are always looking for ways to take care of business without having to petition the men. My mother had 2 kitchen table abortions in the 1940s that really messed her up, and I think I have a little bit of iron in my spine on this subject because I was affected by her shame so badly. Yeah.
Right. I think right now, I mean, you mentioned the word maternity care deserts, and I think that's more to do with doctors who are fleeing some of these red states because they can't provide the care that they wanted. And some of this was already happening before Dobbs. I mean, some of these states are already so regressive and mean. You know, 1,800 women arrested for pregnancy violations. I don't know. For one of them that I wrote about, you know, she smoked a joint, a single joint, the night before she went into labor, and she mentioned it to a nurse, and they called the police, and she was arrested. You know, so but this level of ultra policing. On the other hand, women have become, you know, we need to bring back some mental extraction, but women have been organizing, you know, to get pills to people, to get people transportation, money. I mean, it's incredible the amount of resources that people have developed. It's not sustainable, probably, so we need to change the law. But I think, like, the way communities have come forward now it's just been powerful.
Yeah. I think there's fear. I mean, there's got to be a kind of fear, right, of losing rights. I can't imagine being a young woman right now and suddenly just not having access to this, because my whole experience was it was just always there. So I thought in taking submissions for this anthology, I mean, and Paula, you submitted your Jane piece, and Sin, we went with Gertrude Ederle because, you know, Trudy. But the only person that submitted a piece about contemporary abortion situation where the scene is a girl having to hitch a ride, but not letting the guy know why until the end. And that was written by one of the 3 men in the anthology. And I thought it was just really interesting because I thought so many women were going to be writing about this. And at least just in my little world, I just didn't get the submissions on a contemporary level. You know what I mean? So
I think there's a lot of women writing. I mean, like this group in New York that runs a contest got like 250 submissions.
That's great.
I mean, that doesn't
mean we're all, yeah. The reading of mine just before the pandemic.
It doesn't mean that they're all good, or you know, but not Paula's, of course, is good. But you know, I think there's a lot of people writing about it now. You know, I mean,
the things that struck me was that reading about Restell in the 1870s, at that time, 1 out of 5 pregnancies were terminated by abortion in New York City. And I think one of the things the men don't realize, because women don't talk to men, particularly those kinds of men, they don't understand every woman can probably name 30 or 40 friends who've had abortions. I think they think it's just like with rape or incest in the old days. It happens to 1 out of 10,000 women in a dark alley. It's like, you're not talking to women, or women aren't talking. And I think that part of it is that men, and the whole Republican Party has been gobsmacked that a women's vote is emerging. It's like, I think they just, I just think they have absolutely no idea how common abortion is, because women don't talk about it, you know, and that the women in their family have a whole different understanding and experience because they know their aunts, their cousins, their grandmothers, their mothers. And the men are just like, I don't know anybody who's had an abortion. And the woman's like, I could name 100. I feel like there's this huge thing that used to exist around rape, you know, that it's this rare thing and it doesn't happen to anybody. And it's just an issue of not talking about it. I remember when Gloria Steinem took out some kind of ad and had all these famous women name that they'd had an abortion. And I wish we'd do that again. I felt like that rocked people, all these movie stars that were like owning that they'd had an abortion, most of them when it was illegal. And I just love that they did that.
There is a new generation doing their versions of that Ms. Movement. Yeah, there's Shout Your Abortion by a younger woman. I think there's a hashtag. There's a younger woman who posted about her abortion and got so much attention that she decided to start this group, Shout Your Abortion. And they actually they just did a hilarious campaign of billboards coming into Illinois, where saying, like, encouraging women who are coming into Illinois for abortion, saying, that they're supported. There's different storytelling projects you can Google about it. But yes, it's so important for people to tell their individual stories and demystify it and show it's just a part of normal life.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if that 1 out of 5 statistic is true today. I mean, that even shocked me. I was like, I knew it's a pretty common thing, but, you know, 1870s, 1 out of 5, there must have been a ton of people doing abortions.
Well, I think it's about 1 out of 4 now.
Oh, really?
1 out of 4 pregnancies ends in abortion.
Really?
Yeah, in the U.S. But, you know, just to add to what Paula said, and there's a group called We Testify. They've been doing a lot to bring people together. And I do, we keep a blog twice a month. So we now have 520 entries. Paula has written something, and Carolyn, you're invited to, of arts. It's called Up the Creativity. So it's film, theater, literature, all kinds of stuff, knitting. One of my favorites was a group in Atlanta that was taking speculums, which are now discarded. They're plastic mostly. They're taking speculums and repurposing them into little pieces of art, like painting them. They look like little birds, kind of like, and then they sold them at an auction.
They look like ducks. They look like little duck heads.
Yeah. But
you have a sense of humor. Yeah.
I think the young people, are really taking this to heart. I mean, I think the thing that's almost ironic for me is for a long time they held an older generation to blame for the shrinking of reproductive rights as opposed to expanding, because from 1973 on, they were continually chipped away, whipped away. The Supreme Court really eviscerated them in the Casey decision, and somehow it was our fault. But now they've seen how more powerful forces can come to play and just whip that backlash. And I think around the world where women are facing backlash, it's not just the U.S., but, Poland and Latin America, violence against women laws are being stripped away. Divorce law, no-fault divorce laws are being attacked. And a friend of mine, I was trying to explain this to her based on an article I wrote. And she said, so it's the revolt of the men. Yes. I mean, there is an effort by populists in particular to whip up male support by telling them they're getting ripped off, and they're getting ripped off by laws that give rights to women.
When men get anxious, the first go-to is control a woman. And it doesn't matter if it's their girlfriend or their daughter, but just any woman, but all women is even better. And I feel like we're seeing a hysterical response to catastrophic climate change, which is getting more and more real, and a huge gap between the rich and the poor getting wider and wider. And I think that the men, they feel better if they're controlling women. It's very reassuring to them. So I think the assertion of control is, the first wave of response to the chaotic conditions that are ahead, the massive change that will happen in the next 30 years. And it's already started. And I feel like that's just making them feel in charge. Like, I know how to solve this. Let's take away their rights. And I feel better already, And what I love is that the Republicans have backed off of it, and they're keeping Trump away from public events because he's mentally ill, and he's much more unraveled than he used to be. And he's bragging about, that he got rid of abortion, and they're like, and I think that's hopeful, that they're doing that.
I tried to do an interactive piece called Jane Up, and I think I talked to both Paula and Cindy about that while I was doing it. I don't think I spoke with you a lot about it, Carolyn, at the time, but some of my research, and I can't cite the source right now, but something that I discovered was at some point way back in history, midwifery was outlawed, right? So you weren't allowed to do it. And then along the lines down the road, the Johns Hopkins model was born, which meant that only men could be doctors, so only men could take care of women, and they had no understanding of what it was. And then the midwives kind of faded out, and they were the ones who had been caring for all this. So that's how I think it's kind of patriarchal in the structure. Am I oversimplifying this, Paula and Cindy? Am I getting this wrong? Because I just remember researching it, but I can't cite the sources now.
Yeah, there's a classic book by Barbara Ehrenreich and Deidre English, I think, called For Her Own Good. Yeah, and she also did a Barbara Ehrenreich in the early mid-70s did a whole mini book, I think, about midwives.
That's what I was reading. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that abortion was legal up until it was by 1920. Every state in the U.S. had made abortion illegal, and then it was till 1970s when the legalization started happening. But the 50 years before that, so 1870, abortion was not illegal, or it was, mildly illegal. Like if somebody died, you could get charged. It was doctors. The doctors were starting to organize into associations and to try and expand their business. And it was doctors who argued that they should be the ones to do all this care. So that, yes, so they were trying to push aside midwives and to medicalize, all the obstetrics and gynecology. And the doctors, of course, as you mentioned, were basically all men, except for the occasional woman that slipped through. So that part is like, yeah, very, very true.
I just think the genesis of this is important to understand, that women were taking care of other women. And I don't know if there were male midwives. There may have been, I don't know. But there was an understanding of the female body and how it worked at some point, and then that was removed. And I feel like we're still dealing with the repercussions of that, but I don't know if I'm oversimplifying it. And obviously it's been politicized and every other thing, but I feel like if the information were there, everything would be different. If they didn't think that, well, if you're raped, your body will automatically reject the fetus. If it was just like the most absurd assumptions coming from politicians who are making laws. So I just feel like, I think what everybody's been saying, what Carolyn was saying, that if there was actually an understanding of the facts of the biology, of the frequency, all of that, and maybe that's what's happening now as apps are appearing and people are having to talk about it, right? Because it's having to come into the light, into the surface now. And I guess I want to ask, how much of this is a reflection of the 2017, like the Pussy Hat March? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah.
It's just this next generation. So yeah, I just turned 57, but I'm always astonished at women who are like in their 20s now, just the level of openness about all these issues. That there's some young women in Chicago that started this whole movement. Their publication is called Tight Lipped, and it's about vaginal pain and all these things that so many millions of women go through that have been totally silenced. And to see them so publicly speaking out about all these intimate areas of life that were never spoken about. So as a result, yeah, they're reaching out to medical schools to get better training, and so. But yeah, I wrote about chronic illness, invisible disability 20 years ago. I thought that was sort of radical then, but this is like a whole new level, the younger women now, of what they're sharing.
And they've also started things like period projects. We're on campuses. It's like huge, like to get menstrual products to people, to make them available for free, to get the tax removed, to look at access and safety, so things that, we never, the prior generations never really looked at, seriously. But
yeah, you see that with Me Too, where there's just a boldness. So there were definitely people talking about acquaintance rape when I was in college in the 80s, and I wrote about it in the 90s, but there's just a new level of sense of feeling entitled to speak out that we didn't have as much.
And I have to say, these Danish students, they were 18 that I did on this walking tour, and their teacher, and they just could not understand. They were like, they could not understand what was happening in the US. It was like, how could this happen? And it's really hard to explain how a majority of people somehow ceded or let right-wingers take their political power. The Republican Party, we used to work with a group called Republicans for Choice. The Republican Party was not always as anti-abortion and anti-women as it is. And it's just this stridency that has entered, and it affects not just reproductive rights, but gay and lesbian rights, and all of our rights, voting rights, and the ways that everything is being pushed down, and women are kind of trying to be marginalized, and non-gender, non-binary people. Loretta Ross, who is a genius, literally, she's a MacArthur genius, and she started a thing called calling in, as opposed to calling out. And how can we're all seeking the same political goals, so how do we work together, even if we have some disagreements about, certain issues? And I think that's what we have to focus on and, fight forward. So
I think that giving away the word women.
I don't think we've given away the word, but we maybe have expanded how we look at it. For example, the Dobbs decision did a little film, I guess, with the dissent. And so we had 12 actors who read an excerpt of the dissent that I put together. And it's won a few little awards. It's about women. It's about women's rights. It doesn't matter. They're going to take away our rights, whatever you call them. They're coming after women's rights. They're coming after gay rights. They're coming after trans rights. They're coming after, I would say, the sex discrimination laws are going to fall because they're not written in the Constitution. They were not in the Constitution in 1868, which seemed to be the time period that the majority is focused on. How do we win the big picture? How do we get an ERA into the Constitution that's going to protect everybody, protect women and people of other genders.
To me, when you confuse sex with gender, you will lose the rights you have as a sex, because you can no longer, that's not a protected class anymore.
It's not where the fight is. That's not where they're winning. They attacked women's rights. If you listen to the dissent, you know, it's all about women's rights and how women's rights being lost. So they're not talking about other issues. They're not talking about trans. They're not talking about sports. They're talking about people losing rights. So women are losing their rights in the US, in other countries. A bigger agenda, which is like, you know, stopping this extreme attack on anybody who's on the margins. That's who's being attacked.
And thank you for this. We're running out of time, so I wanted to jump to one other thing, because I think this can keep going in valid ways. But also circling back to religion, all the things we should never be talking about. But in Paula, you'll know this. I think in the early days of the Jane movement, when they had to go to New York and there were being buses sent to New York, there was a preacher man who arranged all the abortions. And there was, right? There were yes, in religion, it was pro-abortion. And that now, like, that got,
If this is something else, they'll be good to dramatize more. And yeah, I interviewed the former head of this, the Clergy Consultation Service. It was an alliance of rabbis and Protestant clergy, and they were very active nationally. I interviewed E. Spencer Parsons, and then I got him to donate all of his papers to Northwestern. He's passed away since then, and there have been some books in the last 10 years about the Clergy Consultation Service, and he worked very closely with Jane. That there were some that on the surface they said that their mission was to take women to New York or places where it was legal, but they also used Jane often for women who couldn't travel or afford to go, like, to Mexico or Japan or New York or the UK. But right. They referred thousands and thousands of abortions.
13,000, is that the number? Why do I think it's 13,000 that Jane did?
Yeah, that's what they often use. Yeah, that's like. So there's some disputes if it could be a bit lower, but it's basically, in the many thousands that Jane did, and the clergy, it was a huge group nationally. Yeah, and they had helped just many thousands of women get abortions. So it is important to look at that at that history and not just see religion as being anti-abortion. So they saw it as a part of their pastoral ministry to help women at crisis. They didn't see it as something that was against their religious values.
Yeah, I think that's such an important detail.
I think that the most important thing people can do right now with the chaos in the reproductive rights movement is become information sources. I call them Sherpas, and know where are the good places to get pills, how the pills work, where are the good places to get abortion funding, and to just become a source for someone else to turn to, because there's so much misleading information out there. Like, people just need to get accurate info and work their way through this horrible chaotic time.
Okay.
I agree. And here in Maine, we have Zoe's House and little things like that, which are pregnancy counseling, anti-abortion groups that disguise that that's their purpose. And they offer a lot of things to scared young women who find themselves pregnant. They're very warm and welcoming, and they're going to offer a range of options, and they really disguise what their agenda is. So there's people really organizing to disseminate disinformation. And of course, it's coming from the churches. And that really makes me angry, that they're not. I kind of wish we could picket them or something. Yeah, it makes me angry. But yeah, I think it's important that every woman take it upon herself to be able to advise a young woman who's coming to them in distress. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and since you're publishing a collection of monologues, I think we just need more diverse stories, more of from women who are pregnant and have had their lives in danger with not being able to get treatment when they need it. More about the abortion pill. So there was an amazing movie that came out during the pandemic called St. Francis, and it featured it was a very, very indie movie. It featured a woman using an abortion pill in a very matter-of-fact way. And I've never, and you don't really see that much in the arts, even though that. So again, just many more stories to do what theater and the arts do well, to sort of convey the emotion, the inner emotions of people that other mediums don't convey.
And I'll just say that in terms of the anthology, well, I said there's only the one man about the contemporary abortion. There's a whole reproductive section, and I was stunned to read these stories about having constant miscarriages. There's this one monologue where it's so gorgeous because she just keeps saying these names, and she's named every single one, and just leveling devastation of people who want a child and can't have a child. I mean, there were so many perspectives. It kind of blew my mind. So I think you will find this in our anthology, and I hope that grows, for sure.
Yeah, there's something about monologues too, to express someone's inner thoughts that's very special. So that's interesting. Yeah, that you picked that format. So that goes along very well with reproductive rights and all these intimate issues.
Yeah, I think a lot of women have to go to the solo show. I know you have, Carolyn, and I know, Cindy, you wrote solo show initially for how she played the game, and there's something about whittling it down to that center to find the voice, and then being able to be expansive from there. So I am going.
How many pieces are in the book?
76. 76. My biggest struggle is the directory in the back, because it's all written so differently that I'm trying to make it in the same world, because I'm a director, and I'm like, oh, I'll just do it first person, But everything else is looking really good. They sent me the final draft of the inside of the book today, so it's moving. It's really moving.
Yeah, that's an amazing accomplishment that you've done.
Carolyn self-published so much, so I don't know. This is just my first time at it, but it feels good. I know you self-published too, Cindy, and Paula, you've been published. So
well, I've published a lot and self-published 34 monologues, 34 short plays on reproductive freedom.
Okay,
that was a self-publishing effort.
And how many have you done, Carolyn? You've 88. So how many do you have? A lot.
I have over 100 titles or something.
Yeah.
And then for you, Paula, you've got books, and then that's a whole different animal, writing a book. I've learned this also. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the scenes and monologues from Jane have been excerpted in different books.
Yeah.
There was one that came out with Haymarket Press a few years ago. That's the first abortion literature anthology. So there's some scenes from Jane in there.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So we've got Cynthia, you're in New York, Paula, you're in Chicago, Carolyn, you're in Maine. It's just, I am so grateful for the internet. And when I first started Venus, this was not possible. I just prayed to be able to use a credit card one day, to be able to receive credit cards and not have to deal with checks and keep the whole box office in a little index card box. And the whole internet has exploded and changed everything for tough times, but also this is such a benefit. So thank you all. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.